Hello, and welcome to another episode of You First. That's right. I'm Shawanna Kennedy, your host, and I'm excited. I'm super excited to be here. What? To talk to you, and you. You know, in You First, it's all things self-care, mental well-being, personal development, and empowerment. And today, y'all, I'm excited because we have a gentleman waiting in the wings. This is a person that is a dedicated community leader. He understands what it looks like and feel like. I believe he almost came out of the womb being a leader, and definitely a man who represents resilience and empowerment. You can't wait because this young man, I have him waiting in the wings. I don't want to delay. Let's get none other than Mr. Dwayne Simmons in the building, y'all. Let's welcome Dwayne Simmons. Hey, Dwayne. Welcome. I'm excited that you are here with me.
Listen, I'm excited to be here, Shawanna. I'm excited to be on your platform. I'm so excited for you. All the great things that you're doing, making sure that we are aware of what it means to truly take care of ourselves. And so I just want to start off by saying thank you for allowing me to be a part of this magnificent platform of yours. Excuse me. Thank you.
It is so important too, oftentimes, because you hear women talk about it, but one of the things, and so I appreciate you coming on, lending your voice, because you do it all the time, guys. If you don't know this young man, he is killing up the streets of Cleveland, Ohio, and beyond. He actually gets to do things by way of work where it takes him all over the globe. However, in Ohio, so OHIO, hey fam, I'm excited because we get to talk about who you are, what you do, what that looks like when you don't put yourself first, when you don't make you a priority, and how that looks like. So what I want to even ask you right out the jump is, what is part of your you first philosophy to where you really had to lean in and make yourself first? Now, let me say this, guys, for if you don't know, I always preface it with, it's never above our creator, because we already know it is in him we live, move, and have our being. He is the author and finisher of our faith. However, we are a gift. So, Mr. Dwayne Simmons, I want to know about your self first, your you first philosophy, and what made you understand that you needed to put you first.
So here's what I'll say about that. And great question, Shawanna. So I've come to realize that we have to be very intentional, right? That's a word that I use quite often, whether I'm in the church platform, corporate platform, or even business, right? You have to be very intentional to the point where you understand that if you're not taken care of, there's no way that you can take care of anyone else. And unfortunately, I understand what the other side of not taking care of yourself looks like. For years and years, I neglected taking care of myself from a mental wellness, sometimes even a physical perspective, right? Because we're so busy being involved in so many things. To your point earlier, I do a lot of work in the community, do a lot of work in the church realm, right? And in the business world. So, and I tell everyone, Shawanna, it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to Pastor Dwayne, or if you're talking to Marlo, or if you're talking to Lo, or Dwayne Simmons, right? There's so many components that make up this young man right here. And so what I'll say is when you learn to become intentional, Shawanna, I think what we find out is that there's layers to our lives that we really have to peel back and say, hey, what part of me is truly broken, right? And then we have to be okay with saying there's some areas in my life that I really need to focus on. And guess what? I can't really help anyone else until I focus on myself. So that intentionality of pulling back those layers, seeing what needs to be, repaired in your own life, because before you make yourself a great presentation, you got to make sure that you're that wholeness, right? We talk about the wholeness of man, that mind, body, and soul. And so for me, being able to make sure that all of those components of my life are taken care of, and I just had to learn how to walk intentionally. And so now I'm not as broken as I used to be, even though God does his best work with broken pieces, right? But there's areas in my life that I knew I had to work on, Shawanna. So I think I've done that. And I'm here to just tell the world, hey, these are some things, especially as Black men, right? We have this taboo as it relates to mental wellness. I've shared with my congregation, I've shared with them on so many occasions that if we don't look in the mirror and take a good look at our reflection, then there's going to be, we'll find ourselves walking in trouble. We'll let our past, unfortunately, interfere with our future, and it doesn't have to be that way. So when you make sure that you're intentional when it comes to mental health awareness, mental wellness, mental health, those are things that I truly, truly focus on. And so I appreciate this platform and being able to talk about it.
I love it. Y'all already see, you could tell he used to talking to the people, right? He used to talking to the people. And so let's get into it though, because I count it a privilege to even be able to hear the voice of a man, to be able to hear the voice of a man, and then him talk about not only what you get to do for others, but for yourself. So I want to know, as a man, some of the misconceptions when you think about, you mentioned it, mental health. I know you get the opportunity to do a lot of work around mental health. What's some misconceptions? Why is it that seemingly our men, our Black men, they have a hard time with getting the help that they honestly need?
Because for the most part, Shawanna, we don't feel like there's anything wrong, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at some of our movies where there's jest being made about someone who has an issue. Oh, that's just Uncle Pete. We'll just put him up in the closet and leave him there up in the room. He's okay. Mama said he's okay. He just doesn't talk to us. No, he needs some help, right? And that's what we have to stop living with, this mindset of, if I just brush it off or if I just push it to the side, I'm gonna be okay. If you were going to be okay, you would already be okay. And so we have to make sure that we take the steps, right, to understand exactly what the problem is. And we typically can't figure that out for ourselves, Sean. We have to bring in those experts to help sometimes psychoanalyze us, right? And that's the misconception, that we feel as though as men, especially as Black men, that we have this tough exterior. We can't let anyone penetrate or see that vulnerable side of us, because it makes us seem as if though we're less effective within our realm, within our community and things like that. So we'll sit there, we'll stress out. Next thing you know, these things that you're not allowing to come out, you're suppressing them. And as soon as we start suppressing them, they start forming themselves in other ways, whether we're acting out with bad behavior, whether we're struggling, in relationships, because we don't know how to be man enough to say, hey, you know what? I need a little help right now before I continue this ugly, vicious cycle. It's so funny. So when I was in the conversation on yesterday, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this.
No, go right ahead.
Talking to one of our teenagers, and she was sharing with me how she has gone through so many generational curses, right? She's watched her grandparents and her great grandparents, even down to her parents, not being able to communicate. And so instead of having an active voice, right, they find themselves communicating with each other just through yelling and screaming and all of these things. And she asked me, she said, Pastor, what can I do in order, because I don't want to continue to perpetrate what I've been exposed to. And I said, you have to stop and say, I'm not going to do this. I refuse to allow my generation to be a part of this curse that we've seen for years. And so she agreed that she would get the help that she needed. We were able to get her on with someone who understood her story, had actually lived out her story. And so now, Shawanna, I can say that she's getting that help that she needs. And it all starts with acknowledging the fact that there's something wrong.
No, I love that. I have to say this too, because the word that you said that made me say, Now, I do believe that there are other things in other realms.
Okay.
One of the things that I believe, and you can help me right up and through here, I believe in some cases how you said in her case, and it's been said, I know we've said it, I've said it in times past about things being a curse. Mm-hmm. I recently had a conversation with another psychotherapist, and then the conversation in which I said that I had to know for myself with some things that I was like, I'm going to be the person to stop it with my family, even if it starts with my immediate family, to where stop calling it even a curse. Okay. Those are habits that we have passed down, habits, patterns that we have passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. And you're right, breaking those habits, breaking those patterns. So I think because you said we're being intentional, it's even having that conversation to intentionally watch the words that we use, because if we keep saying curse, then we're bringing those things up on us instead of saying, I need to change this mindset, this pattern, this habit, this behavior. So some of that intention has to be with intentionally watching the words that we call over a thing, because we know you could tell better than me the life and the death of a thing just by what we're saying. What is your thought on that?
And I truly agree, Shawanna. And I think I just use general because verbiage.
It's the words that are used, and it's even start with what are the words? What are the words that we're saying that we're holding our own self? We have the handcuffs and the key.
Exactly. And like I said, sometimes, especially being a public speaker, right, we often use phrases that we know are very familiar, right?
Yeah.
When I start speaking of generational curses, I know immediately that ear gravitates like, wait a minute, I've heard that before, right? While we can understand the semantics of it, right? And we do have to be mindful, right? We have to be mindful of speaking things into existence and be careful what comes out of our mouth, because, right, life and death definitely does what? Lies in the power of the tongue. So I definitely agree with you in that. But I had to use that phrasing with her because it was a phrase that she started with me.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So and she said, Pastor, this is what I've been exposed to. Think about it, Shawanna. In most cases, most people that we come across, we're basically seeing what their exposure looks like, right? Everything that they have been exposed to, if they didn't know how to fix it, now you're becoming a part of their exposure, whether it's good or bad. And in most cases, if it's a situation that we know needs to be addressed and fixed, it's probably not something that's good. And so I'm glad you brought that point out, because you're right. Intentionality means speaking the proper verbiage when it comes to making sure that we're having the right conversations. Like I said, oftentimes as public speakers, we use phrases that are familiar. But if you're not careful, you can accidentally, right, allow verbiage to continue, and it may not always be the most possible or positive way to say it. So thank you for that. So I'm gonna make sure I put that in my notes, right?
And it wasn't even a form of correction in no way. I just know it for my own self and for my family. When I look at things and that are people that are even close to me, it's like, no, because we have power, and we forget. Or some people don't even know. And that's why I love what you get to do to remind people the power and authority that has been bestowed unto them when they accept, right?
Exactly.
And it's with that, we also have a responsibility. And I love that because this is viewed by people in all walks of life. So understanding public speakers, business owners, entrepreneurs, moms, dads, uncles, all of those folk, it's just no matter what we do, even if that's the teaser to hook them into the conversation, to get them into our speeches, it's then saying, I'm glad now that I have your attention.
Right, exactly.
And then going into that to then break it down even further, just by understanding the power and authority, just by the changing of one word, what that means.
Exactly.
You already know we could go so many ways with just saying the power of one word. Hello.
That's right.
I'm just saying the power of one word.
That's right.
So I want to know with all of this, that you get to do, what happened, or at what age? Because we know well, people don't know. We go a few decades back, right? We got that kind of history. We go a few decades back. And watching you grow, I mean, you've always been, like I said, a leader. You always have had resilience, that bounce back. Nothing keeps you down for too long. And if it does, because of how you choose, right? It all is we get a choice of how we choose to move and lean into certain things. How can you even help someone, or even give an example of when you was like, I don't like this? Like, what does that look like, even from a male perspective, and saying, I had to turn the corner in another direction? Let's talk about that.
And honestly, Shawanna, so I went to a seminar, right? I was in Birmingham, Alabama, had the opportunity to hear this great speaker, Simon T. Bailey. And it's funny that it's not funny, it's actually ironic that you're using the word resilience, right? Because what he talked about, and this was more so to corporate, but I think a lot of principles and ideologies that we discuss, they transcend corporate, church, like I said, community. And so what he talked about the importance of understanding what resilience is, But he didn't stop there, because we know that resilience is basically us not allowing anything to stop us, right? Regardless of the obstacles, regardless of what we're maybe going through, resilience means that you are allowing yourself to continue to move forward. But he brought in another interesting aspect to that. And this aspect was talking about brilliance. So he said there's one thing in order for us to have resilience, but there's another thing to have brilliance. Resilience is when you see that thing that may stop you. Brilliance is when you understand that it can't stop you, right? And so for me, what I had to understand, Shawanna, and I was a product of my community, right? A product of my environment. I grew up, I was that 80s baby, right? Well, a little 70s too, right? But more 80s. And so we know the crack epidemic was really, it was huge. It was ugly in the Midwest for us. And so when I came home from college, Swan, I seen that my friends were making $1,000 every 2 hours, and I was making $1,000 every 2 weeks, and the math wasn't math. And so I started becoming a part of all these other worlds and all doing all these other things. And we'll talk about that at another time. But there came a point in my life where I had to make a decision, and I need to give credit and honor to your husband, Pastor LeBron Kennedy, because I had got to this point where I was resilient, right? I was a fighter, but I had lost my way. See, there's times that on this path, that's one of the great things that God will take us through. He'll allow you to see the end of your vision, but he won't allow you to see the path that will get you to the end of your vision, right? And so while that thing is beautiful, it took LeBron. I came to LeBron and I said, listen, man, I need to make a decision. I grew up in the church, but the church just didn't stay a part of me. And I'm not talking about the physical church. I'm talking about the more spiritual church, because we understand we are the church. And I talked to him. I said, listen, I need to make a decision, because Lo wants to go back to the streets. But I understand that my calling is much bigger and much greater than the things that I'm doing right now, because God had already had a calling on my life when I was about 17. At this point, Shawanna, I was right around 23 or 24. And I said, listen, LeBron, you need to help me. And he said, I want you to do one thing. Promise me, Lo, that you'll come to church. And that's when I started going to Blessed Hope Missionary Baptist Church, right? And so it was at that point, Shawanna, that my resilience allowed me to stay on course. But it was the brilliance of the Lord, right, that helped me to understand that you do have some great things in you, but you're not producing at the level in which I've called you to produce. And so it wasn't until I, put God back first in my life, right? And that's when that resilience went to brilliance. I understood that I was on a great path, and I had all the components of what God had called me to be great in my space. I tell everyone, it's okay if you're in the box. Gerald Levert used to say, hey, listen, I know I'm in the box, but I'm great in my box, and can't nobody beat me at being great in my box. And so at that moment, at that time, Shawanna, I'll be honest, that's when I start seeing the glory of God in my life. That's when things started to turn around. My resilience transitioned to brilliance, and then it put me on the pathway. My whole trajectory of life had changed because I understood the word of God, where it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these other things shall be added unto thee. I was seeking the things, but I wasn't seeking God. And so it just had me off. It didn't mean that I wasn't still resilient, because I was. I just wasn't walking in my brilliance at the time.
Woo! That's good. That's so juicy. That is so good. That is so good. And I like that. And you already know he loved you. You know he loved you. That's your brother.
Yes, yes.
And I want to know, because of what you get to do, how do you encourage others, especially men? Like I said, I know you're doing a major work with men, especially in the community. How do you get them to lean into the self-care? We know even that mental component, but just even the self-care, we know, God rest his soul, just even recently going home to have memorial for one of my uncles who just recently passed.
Yeah.
And it's getting the checkups that we need physically.
That's right.
Physically, not just mentally, but physically. How do you help the men in the community that you get to help right now? What are the things that you get to say when you lean in and you have their ear that make them want to then say, you know what, Doc, you right. Let me make this appointment.
So the first thing, men have to respect you, and the men won't respect you until you respect them. too many times, especially in our church platform, we have men who and I hate to say it this way, but can oftentimes be degrading because they're not always willing to accept when another man is just going through an issue, right? Especially those of us who are alpha males. We don't oftentimes allow men to make excuses for why things aren't lining up the way they need to line up. Well, listen, I've been at every end of the spectrum. I'm like Paul. I've learned how to abound and abase. So I treat everyone with respect because I know what it's like to be up and what it's like to be down. And so we don't know how broken people are especially when they enter into the house of the Lord. And so the first thing we can do, Shawanna, is to make sure that we give them the respect as men that they deserve, even if they're not in a great place financially, mentally, spiritually, right? We still have to give them that respect. Now, here's what I've learned. In the church, we do a great job of focusing on the soul, right? Because when you start thinking about that three parts of man, the mind, the body, and the soul, we're just focusing on the soul. We're giving them the spiritual aspect of everything, right? And so if a man comes in the house and he's broken, it's great that his soul, that you help get him saved, you help get him salvation. But what about his body and his mind, right? Right now, Shawanna, what I've realized is that it becomes a vicious cycle. Yeah, Pastor, I'm saved. I'm on my way to heaven. But guess what? I'm still mentally messed up and I'm broke is all get out, right? So I created systems and programs, Shawanna, that deals with all three parts of the man, the mind, the body, and the soul. So here's what I did. So coming to church, receiving salvation, that's the soul. We start talking about mental wellness, right? That's that mind. I put them in positions. We have mental wellness experts that come in on a regular basis to address the men. Right now, we have what's called Men of Valor. We are a group of men. It's about 30, 35 of us. We come together about once a month. We meet at Warrensville Heights Library, and we have a doctor who comes in and he talks to us specifically about mental wellness. And we've been doing this now, Shawanna, for about 6 or 7 months. We'll be kicking off the new year, so there's going to be a huge campaign. And so I'll make sure that, when you and I get back together again, we could talk about that platform. So that's the mind and that's the soul. But now what about the body? The body is that physical component. The body is, hey, Pastor, I need to figure out how to make money to take care of my family. I'm doing fine spiritually. I'm doing great mentally, but I'm still broke, Pastor. So what I had to do, Shawanna, I often find myself, because I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I was able to ink a contract with one of the largest entities in Northeastern Ohio. And now I have 6 men who are working for me. They are general contractors with Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority. And so it's a very great opportunity. I pay them extremely well. So now I'm able to have open conversations, Shawanna, because they trust me, they respect the work, and they understand that I'm helping them to take care of their mind, body, and soul. You can't just take care of a portion of a man. You have to help the whole man become whole. And this is how we take those steps in order to get to that place where there's a place of peace, not only in the church, but in their home and in their community. And so I thank God for giving me the outlet and the opportunity to be able to do that. The work, I don't like being selfish, Shawanna, and you know this about me. If I'm doing something great, I want everyone to be a part of that greatness. We have to be selfless in our operations, in our actions, so that people can say, hey, you know what? Regardless of what anyone has ever said about me, that man helped me and my family. And I want that to be my legacy, that I was a person who helped the community. Not that I was a great businessman, great preacher, great pastor. No, he helped us. And that's the most important thing that I could do.
I love it. Don't y'all love him? Don't y'all love him? Y'all better be following him right now. Let him know in the comments that you are enjoying this conversation from Dwayne Simmons. He is Dwayne Simmons everywhere, 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 everywhere. Make sure you are following him. This is such a juicy conversation. I want to know, what is one of the things that I often ask my guests is, if you had to find one word outside of Jesus,
Okay.
love the Lord.
Right.
Outside of Jesus, when things are, and you just having a day, I don't like to say life be lifing, because we still get to have control, right? That we know that's the thing, that's the trend.
Right.
If you had to find one word, when I think about you first, when I think about self first, right? What is the one word that really can calm Dwayne down?
Now you took away my safe word by not allowing me to say Jesus, but my one word will and that's why I say it's so ironic that you use the word resilience, because that's the word that I use. Shawanna, I remind myself, right? Mm-hmm. Be resilient. Sometimes I'll use another word, right? Because I love wordplay. People say I'm a tad bit verbose, right? I like to use some big words every now and then. At halftime, I don't know what they mean. Steadfast, right? Steadfast is my word that helped me get through so many dark times. Shawanna, I love that song, and I think we used to sing it at Blessed Hope. Be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the works of the Lord. Man, my goodness, listen, when I talk about steadfast, resilience, and then now understanding even that brilliance component to it, that's my word, Shawanna, and I hope that becomes someone's word that's listening to our platform today. That when you become steadfast and you understand what that truly means, allowing God to work in those dark places of your life. There's times in which God consecrates us, right? It means he separates us and he removes us. And so many times people think that when we're not hearing from the Lord, there's something wrong. And I tell people, no, there's not something wrong. The only time that a teacher doesn't talk to the students is when they're in the midst of issuing a test. And that's all that you're going through. You're going through a test. And guess what God will do? Once the test is over with, Shawanna, he'll say, hey, you did well here. Here you got some opportunity. So you may have to take that test again. But guess what? This portion of the test, you pass with flying colors. So that's where faith comes in, right? Faith allows that whole man to become whole. And God will allow us to go through those spaces in order to test our faith, to see how we're going to come out. And I can honestly say there's some tests that I failed along the way, but they won't get me today, Shawanna. The enemy don't know how to push them buttons anymore. Yeah. So I thank God for him being such a great teacher, right? So that's what I would say. Steadfast, since I can't call on the name of Jesus for this one, right?
Well, he always welcome around here, right? We know that he is in the midst of what is happening and what is really currently even going on in both of our lives, And I am so grateful. I'm so grateful. Y'all already know that this man, this powerful, strong man of God, because he has so many things that you already know we're going to have to do a part 2, because I still need to talk to the husband. I need to talk to the house band. I need to talk to the person when we get to thinking about, and let's just even talking about that relationship and what that looks like. So I would be remiss if I did not step into what that looks like and putting yourself first and making you first even in your relationships, right? So y'all, that means y'all gonna have to come back, right, and check us out for a part 2. So I'm grateful for you, Pastor Simmons, Dwayne Simmons, the leader, the man that's resilient and brilliant, for joining me for this episode of You First. So y'all gonna have to check out the next episode. So I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Simmons, we'll be right back.
All right, thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Kennedy Media, your ultimate partner in content creation, video recording, and digital marketing. Be seen, be heard, and increase visibility in your business. Contact us today at KennedyMediaLLC.com, KennedyMediaLLC.com, and unlock your brand's full potential.